Hello there, welcome to episode 2 of the War Thunder Tech Tree Guide, Soviet Edition. If you haven't seen the first episode, I recommend you go watch it first, and then come back here. I've put a link in the description. In this episode, we will cover battle ratings of 2.3 to 3.7 in the Soviet Tech Tree. I will recommend what I think is the best research order, and provide some lineup ideas for the vehicles in this battle rating range. This BR range is where the Soviet tech tree's identity becomes a bit more obvious. Good mobility, good armor, and effective guns. Classes of vehicles start diverging more significantly than at earlier ranks, which are dominated by light tanks. The Soviet vehicles at this BR range also have access to a wide range of ammunition options. We begin with the T-80 light tank. The T-80 is a development of the T-70 discussed in the last video. It has the best rate of fire of all the tanks featured in this video, and has better survivability when compared with the T-70, owing to its crew size of 3 rather than 2. The armor on the T-80 is not bad for a light tank at 45mm, but with main guns becoming more powerful, it can't be relied upon. The T-80 also retains the slow turret reverse and bouncy suspension of its predecessor. The best use for the T-80 is as a flanker or a scout. The T-80 is the only light tank at rank 2. Moving over to the medium tank line, we have the T-50. The T-50 is probably the best Soviet light tank at this tier. It has excellent mobility, armor rivaling some medium tanks. At 2.7, its 45mm 20-K main gun is starting to show its age, but does get access to an APCR round that can be useful when nothing else will penetrate. The T-50's turret reverse is unfortunately very slow. It does, however, make an excellent flanker and scout, but can also be used as a frontline fighter in a pinch. The T-50 is followed by the first medium tank in the medium tank line, the T-34 1940. This version of the T-34 sets the tone for all T-34s following it. It has good sloping armor, excellent turret reverse speeds, good mobility, and an effective gun. The 1940 model is armed with the 76mm L11 gun, which is adequate at best and will struggle against heavily armored opponents, often even when hitting their side. To help mitigate this, it is a good idea to carry at least a few of the armor-piercing ballistic cap shells for situations when the armor-piercing high-explosive ballistic cap can't penetrate. Folded with the T-34 1940 is the T-34 1941. The 1941 is armed with the F-34 76mm main gun. This is the gun that will arm most of the T-34s, and it is very good at one-shotting opponents. It can still struggle to penetrate heavy armor, but not to the same degree as the L11. Continuing down the line, we come to the T-34 1942. The T-34 1942 is very similar to the T-34 1941, except that it trades a little bit of turret armor for a higher rate of fire and an armor-piercing composite rigid shell that can prove useful, especially since there is a lot of opponents that have flat armor. All the T-34s are effective brawlers, having good mobility, good armor, effective guns, and fast turret reverses, which allows them to quickly react to any threat. Our first tank in the heavy tank line is the folded T-28E. The T-28E is functionally the same as the T-28 mentioned in episode 1. The T-28E just has slightly more armor and is slower due to the added weight. Next up is the first true heavy tank in the Soviet tech tree, the KV-1 L11. The KV-1 has heavy armor, especially when you angle the hull. The mobility is also pretty good, especially when it comes to heavy tanks. The main drawback of the KV-1 is that it uses the same 76mm L11 gun as the T-34 1940, and so has the same penetration issues. The KV-1 is a good breakthrough tank, useful on the front lines, but don't neglect cover and concealment. The tank is not invulnerable, just highly likely to survive many hits, but can still be knocked out easily, if not positioned properly. The next heavy tank is the KV-2 1939. This tank combines the armor of the KV-1 with a 152mm M10T howitzer. The M10T allows the KV-2 to kill nearly any tank in the entire game with a well-placed high-explosive shell, but the reload rate for such a massive shell takes nearly a full minute. This tank is more of a meme than anything else. The slow turret traverse and reload make using it as a frontline tank a non-option. Its most effective use is as a second-line fire support platform. Moving over to the tank destroyer line, we have the Su-122. The Su-122 is armed with the M30 122mm howitzer. This gun has similar performance to the 152mm on the KV-2, but due to its smaller size, it has less TNT in the shell, but the reload, while still slow compared to more traditional guns, is much faster than that of the KV-2. Like the tank destroyers in the first episode, the Su-122 is best used as an ambush vehicle. Next up, the humble-looking ZiS-30. Don't let this thing's size fool you. Its 57mm ZiS-2 anti-tank gun has excellent penetration characteristics and a good rate of fire. Its small size does limit the high explosive filler of the shells, however, which in turn can limit the one-shot potential, especially against large vehicles with large internal volumes. Again, the ZiS-30 is best used as an ambush vehicle. This is true of nearly all tank destroyers in the Soviet tech tree. Next up is the Su-57B. The Su-57B is terrible. Just stick with the ZiS-30. The Su-57B only works well when you get it into a good position, but the mediocre mobility of the Su-57B makes it very difficult to get into a good position. It is armed with a very similar 57mm gun to the ZiS-30, but I would recommend against using it. The last tank destroyer in our battle rating range today is the Yag-10. I personally love this thing. It is pretty mobile, being on a truck chassis, and its 76mm 29-K has excellent penetration rates, coupled with a large amount of high explosive filler. It is often able to destroy any opponent with a single shot. The Yag-10 also gets access to a rangefinder, allowing very accurate fire over long ranges. The Yag-10 is best used as an ambush vehicle, particularly if you can find a position where you can hide most of the truck chassis behind a rock or ridge line. This allows only the gun and maybe one or two crew members to be exposed, which presents a very small target, particularly at long range. Our first SB-AAG is the Gaz MM72-K. Following the Soviet tradition, it's a truck chassis with an anti-aircraft gun mounted on the back. This gun is pretty effective, a 25mm 72K autocannon. It has access to a fragmentation incendiary shell, which is very effective against aircraft. In addition, it also has access to an armor-piercing shell that is effective against the sides of basically every tank at its battle rating, and even the front of some lighter vehicles. The BTR-152A is the next vehicle in the line. Personally, I find that the 14.5mm KP-VT machine guns that this thing has don't do enough damage to be truly effective. Following the BTR is the ZiS-12 94km, which is in essence the Gaz MM72K, but with a twin-barrel version of the 25mm 72K. This doubles its damage output, making it possibly the best SB-AAG that the Soviets have at this BR. The other vehicle with claim to that title is the ZiS-43. It's our first rank 3 vehicle in the series. It's armed with the 37mm 61K cannon. This cannon has a low rate of fire for an SB-AAG, but generally only requires one hit to down a plane. The 37mm also has better armor penetration characteristics when compared to the 25mm. There are quite a few options when it comes to the order of research for these vehicles. This is, in my opinion, the best order to research these vehicles in. I have also included the folded vehicles, however these may be skipped if you so choose. Start with the T28E, then get the T80, followed by the Su-122 and the ZiS-30, followed by the Gaz MM72K. Next, get the T50 and the Su-57B. Next, get the T-34 1940 and then the KV-1. Follow the KV-1 with the Yag-10 29K. Now get the T-34 1941, followed by the T-34 1942. Now get the BTR 152A and the ZiS-12 94K. Next get the KV-2 1939. And finally, the ZiS 43. These are my favorite lineups using the vehicles we've discussed today. These are not the only lineups out there. Experiment a bit and find what works for you. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, please drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode of the War Thunder Tech Tree Guide Soviet Edition.